Right, hello everybody, let's make a start then. Before we get started properly, just a few little bits of housekeeping, if I may. As you all heard from the Zoom announcement, this webinar, well, this conversation will be being recorded and it will be made available online as soon as I have some time, but it will be soon, I promise. As this is a conversation, please could you all keep yourselves on mute if possible, unless invited to speak. That would be really, really helpful. Do use the chat box though to have a conversation with each other, and also you can ask Elaine any questions on there and we will be monitoring that throughout the session. So we will be monitoring, as I said, throughout the session, but we will also have a bit of time at the end for some Q&As as well. Welcome everybody, welcome to the 6th Cooperative Women's Voices conversation. I'm Rebecca Harvey, I'm Executive Editor at Cooperative News, and with me on the platform and asking the questions today is Sarah Aldred, who is Programmes Manager at the Cooperative College. Cooperative Women's Voices grow out of something called the Co-op Women's Challenge, which is aimed to really empower women in the cooperative movement. And the Cooperative Women's Voices has been run by Sarah and myself since January, basically to have a conversation with women in the movement who have done some amazing things, have some fantastic stories to tell, and who have been themselves inspired by, you know, women and men around them. We've spoken to Simel Essem from the ILO, Sarah Vicari from Around the World.coop, Rose Marley for the new Chief Executive at Cooperative UK, Sonia Diaz from WeGo, and Helen Wiseman from Mid Counties. And today, for a grilling or a roasting or a likely toasting, whichever way you'd like to take your pick, is none other than Elaine Dean, who I'm sure all of you have heard of if you don't know her already. So a little personal story. I first met Elaine in about August 2017, and I was interviewing for a job at Co-op News. And when I first looked at the Co-op, I was like, oh, brilliant, at the Co-op Food Shop, I'll work for them. That was great. Delved a bit deeper. That was absolutely fine. So in my interview, I was interviewed by former editor Anthony and Elaine and Richard Bickle as well. And from the very first times I met her, I was made incredibly welcome to this whole wonderful world of co-ops. So when I joined, Elaine was chair of Co-op Press, and she stood down in 2019 for a year out for good governance, and I'm delighted to say that she was re-elected chair at the board meeting after our AGM last night. So congratulations, Chair Elaine Dean. Elaine has also been president of Central England Co-operative for the last 3.5 years, which was a massive high spot for her. She did have to recently stand down under rules of the society, but she's still very, very much involved as vice president of Central England. So I'm going to pass over now to Sarah and to Elaine, who will lead this session. And have fun everybody and enjoy.
Thanks, Bex, and just hello everybody. And like Bex says, you know, this is the 6th one, and we're absolutely enjoying doing, you know, just it's such a joy to be able to speak to a range of inspirational women. And today we've got Elaine in front of us. So Elaine, it's me and you in conversation with questions that are going to be coming in. And the first question really, because one of the things that we want to do as part of this Co-op Women's Voices series is to understand the sources of the women's lives who we're talking to. So we just want to kind of, you know, I know through talking to you, you know, what is the source of your life, and also around, I know you were born into a cooperative family, you were born in you know, so do you want to explain just a bit about your upbringing and where co-ops come into that?
Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yes, I was born into a cooperative family. My family, grandfather, father, mother, grandparents all worked for the co-op and have about 250 years of collective service to the co-op in Derby. And I was born, and my first appearance at 2 weeks old was down at the co-op sports ground in Littleover at the tennis club, of which I was a member for many, many years until we sold off the land. The bowls club is still there. I'm vice chair of the bowls club for some bizarre reason, even though I don't play bowls, because I want to preserve it for cooperators in the future. So I was lucky. I grew up as a member of the co-op tennis club for many, many years. Played for the co-op because I worked there on Saturdays and holidays as a student, so I qualified to play for the co-op. The downside of that was I had to partner my father, who was a fiercely competitive player, and you know, he he was determined to win at all costs. It was really, really tested to play with him. But and that was that. And then I went on. I was lucky. My father believed in educating a daughter, which was really quite important back then, and quite unusual in many ways. I went on to become a teacher. Made a bit of a disastrous first marriage, and then things started to go wrong a bit at the co-op in Derby. What had been a family firm where everybody was happy. We had a new chief executive whose management by fear, I think, is probably the best way of describing it. And my father used to come home really upset because he'd had 4 hours in his office being yelled at, usually the day before he went on holiday. And then as he left the grilling, he was told, and I'll see you first day back. So you can imagine the sort of holiday people used to have. The biggest bully I've ever met in my life. And my mother and I used to talk about it. And in the end, I said, "Oh, we're not putting." I said, "Who's on the board? Who's on the board?" So I went and looked at like nearly all old men and 3 old elderly ladies. So I said to my mother, "I'm going to stand for the board." So she said, "Well, you can't because you're pregnant." So I said, "Well, nothing in the rules that says that you can't stand for the board because you're pregnant." So I said, "I'm not going to." I never told anybody I was pregnant. Nobody knew except my work colleagues and my immediate family. And I went canvassing, and I stood on my own ticket on my own against the chief executive and made that very clear. And there were 6 vacancies, 3 colleague vacancies, 3 lay. And I got one of the 3 lays. I was the only woman elected, of course. I was the only woman that ever had of childbearing years. And then, of course, when they found out I was pregnant, oh, dear me.
Yeah, it might be a good point actually here to share, because I know you've shared lots of pictures and images. I know we did this with Helen as well. Can we bring, because I know we have some pictures around the time you're talking about as well, but I mean, I absolutely love these images. So do you just want to talk through them with us away?
Yes, we were always presenting big cheques. In fact, that's signed by the chief executive, Gilbert Hyatt. That gentleman on the right, Wilf Downing, he was a chair at one time as a long-standing board member. And then I don't actually, the Pear Tree Project group, and I can't remember, we were doing this all the time. I can't remember exact groups. No,
but it's just great to see you there, and there again here as well. It's just fantastic to see.
Yes.
So when would this be, Elaine? What, you know?
No, that was Ros Wren is on the left. Quite a lot of people remember Ros Wren. And she was actually, we always say, my bridesmaid when I remarried. She was the member relations officer. And so we were doing something there with presenting something to children by the looks of it.
It's like a generation game, actually.
Yeah, and there's a rock. Can you see on the right hand side? There's a jigsaw puzzle of Toad Lane. I've still got one of those.
We've got Gillian in the audience here as well. So.
I know.
I love the fact there's a cuddly bear there.
I know.
Generation that's cuddly bear.
Yes, cuddly bear here. Yeah. That was the vicar. Reverend Peter Harding, I think his name was. Tanya might remember. I can't remember what we're doing. Oh, that's a colouring competition, I think. One World Week.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant.
I can't see the year. My eyesight's not that good. That was some children from the school where I taught, because there's the guy with the beard at the back is another teacher at the school, and Ros Wren on the far right again. So those would be children from the school where I taught. And that jigsaw's there again, look.
Your own message.
We had a lot to get rid of. So yeah, that was the board.
I love this picture.
1985, Gilbert Hyatt on the front at the right, chief executive. Dave Roberts behind him, back right. Paul Arnold, the society secretary, front left. You could see me next to the president, Bill Anderson. And there's another lady, Sylvia Allen. She was on the board, but she very, very rarely attended meetings. So quite often the president used to say, "Good evening, lady and gentleman." So I was a bit outnumbered there, and I quite liked it when she did attend, but it was a bit, didn't stop me there.
No, it's a fantastic picture. So
yeah, with Ros Wren again presenting something or other. I don't know. I can't remember all this. Dozens of these photographs. That was that problem you've just flicked past was tennis presentation. Now here, if you see second left is Jane Avery, current president of Central England Society, and there we are as young, slim women. I don't know what we were doing there. It looks a bit women's guildy, but I love that dress. But there was Jane and I, and we've been friends 40 years, still best friends. Yeah. That was a tennis presentation. That was the tennis club, and that was a presentation to some of the young players and their front right. Fred Brocklehurst front left. He was city councillor for leisure. We were presenting awards that the co-op had sponsored some. Yeah. Senior members gathering. That's the only. That's brilliant. That's one of the. We still do that, and we've got it lined up for August, assuming we're released.
So what is it, Elaine? What is
Senior members gathering? It's the only one in the country that's carried on. It's been running for over 125 years. Tanya and I found evidence that it was held back before the First World War, and it was for members, people who've been members for 60 years. So the minimum age for attendance would be 76, and the people come for a free tea and entertainment. Brilliant. And we still do it. The only thing we don't do now is supply free cigarettes. There's quite a lot used to light up and pass out. Take a deep breath and go all dizzy. But it's a fabulous event. It's one of the best events of the year.
Brilliant.
Oh,
this is great as well.
Yeah,
Look at the jumpsuit actually. So,
my jumpsuit, yeah, skipping for charity for something. We were doing so many skips for charity. See how fit I was. Well, that's the co-op baby. That's Oliver. My
gorgeous.
son.
Yeah.
Nearly born in the boardroom. Very nearly born in the boardroom.
Is that true, Elaine? Is that?
It's absolutely true. Gilbert Hyatt asked me when my baby was due, and I wouldn't tell him, so he had to guess. And what we used to do then, we had votes on shop closures, and my group, because when I was elected, I got on really well with the guys that I was elected with. These 5 men were all sort of Labour Party left wing, so I got on really well with them, and we were opposed to shop closures. So it was at the end of June, and he put shop closures on the agenda for the board meeting, making this assumption that I wouldn't be there. You see, I'd be in hospital having a baby, and all these chats were ringing me up and telling me not to have hot baths, don't drink any gin, sit with my legs up, and all this sort of stuff because we'd only got a majority of 1, and it was me. So I turned up at the meeting with my cushion in a carrier bag, because my back ached, and sat down. And then I started getting these awful pains. And I'm sitting next to the chair of the union, who's a bachelor, about 50. And I said to him, I've got terrible pains. And he sort of looked over his glasses at me and he said, well done. He said, you've got 2 choices. He said, you either start rolling on the floor, yelling and screaming, or you stick it out. So I stuck it out and voted against the shop closures, and then went straight off to the Derby City Hospital.
Oh, and that's absolute commitment. That's, if there's a sign of commitment, I mean, that's it, isn't it? So, and this is gorgeous as well. So who are these 2 little ones?
They're my grandchildren. They're my son's twins. They were 1 year old a couple of weeks ago.
Wonderful.
Max and Matilda. And you will notice that they are different colours because my son's wife is of Jamaican and English heritage, and Max is exactly like her, and Matilda is just like Oliver was really as a baby.
Gosh, it's
so
amazing, isn't it? Genes are just
they're
amazing.
going to have a fabulous time convincing people that they're twins, aren't they? So
Brilliant.
I love them to bits. I'm off to see them on Monday.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. I think this might have been at one of the women's events. So yes, it was, wasn't it? We held Central England Women's Voices events, and it would be the one when Debbie first joined us. She got shorter hair then. Barbara Rainford from Mid Counties Board, and she's just stepped down as chair of Co-op Press. She replaced me as chair for 2 years while I took my time out. Barbara's been press chair. Now she's taking her time out for good governance. So that was at the Women's Voices event there. That's the Derby Member Relations Committee. There's Tanya.
Yay.
On the right, you can see. And I'm not quite sure what we're actually doing there, but we're promoting co-op news somewhere, aren't we? I'm not exactly sure
where that is.
No, don't know.
Well, we'll come on to this later about your role with Co-op News as well, but
that's at Scott Mid's event just before lockdown, and we had the biggest Burns supper, and we're in the Guinness Book of Records as Harry Kearney there, looking dapper in his tartan waistcoat, president of Scott Mid, John Daly, who's their secretary, chief financial officer, and Jim Watts, Central England Society secretary. And it was an absolutely fabulous event. Wonderful.
It really was. We're trying to convince them to do another one at some point.
Yes, yes, we should do
on the chat. Just going to bring up a couple of comments. People have been very complimentary around it. Shaz, who's also on our board, says this is like the Zoom version of This Is Your Life. This is your co-op life. And Jillian wants everyone to know that the jigsaw, it's actually a very difficult jigsaw. So if anyone wants to give it a go, check out the jigsaw.
Have we still got some?
Oh, there must be some around somewhere.
I'm sure there is, I'm sure.
And Juliet says she loves that you weren't put off by a totally all-male environment.
No.
That's the story of a life, Elaine, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Elaine, honestly, huge thanks for going through those pictures. I mean, it's a great way of kind of just getting a sense of you as well and sense of your life. But going back to that issue of, and not the issue, but the question of the source of your life, before we go on to women who've inspired you and people who've inspired you, what would you say? Because I'm always curious about what is it the thing that is core to you? What is what influences everything you do? What is the source of, because you know you've done lots of inspirational things, so what is it at the centre of everything for you?
Loyalty, I think. Loyalty to people, loyalty to principles, keeping promises, things like that, really. Richard III, loyalty binds me, was his motto. Yeah, no, well, thank you for that, because I know it's just, you know, one of the things is, you know, other women looking at this and going, well, what is it about Elaine? And it's just, you know, it's just really, it's kind of really inspirational. It's always speaking truth, really, and calling it out, and being honest about things.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, say so.
Yeah, no.
If you do, say so.
Yeah, and it takes a strength of character, though, doesn't it, to do that alone? It takes an element of courage for women to do that, particularly. So well,
there was one 2 years ago. I don't know if there's anybody online who was there or who remembers it, but I said I was going to do it. Was when we had the event at Congress that was for chief executives and presidents, and I felt that this was elitist, and I wanted to stop it. And I used to sit there thinking, this isn't right, and we were having steak and smoked salmon and a very posh alcohol, and then our rest of our delegation were out there having burgers and fish and chips and stuff like this, and two of my delegation were told off for accidentally picking up the drinks off the elite table. And I thought, this isn't co-op-y at all. So I thought, well, I'm going to say something. I didn't say anything to anybody. And I waited till Central England hosted it. And then I stood up, and there's all the chief executives. We got, the guest speaker was Doug O'Brien, who'd been an advisor to Barack Obama. So, you know, it was a really powerful audience. And I stood up and said that I felt most uncomfortable because it was elitist, and I didn't think we should be holding it. And I felt that we should be out there with our delegation. And it was Debbie's first time with me, and she just sat giggling at the side of me. I can't believe you did that. So, well, it's what I think. And it's been stopped. We've not done it. This is the retail conference. It's
living the values, it's living the values and principles, though, isn't it? And I guess that's what you're talking to when you
just didn't feel right. But to stand up and say I'm so glad I was behind the table, because I think my knees were knocking, you know, because I knew this isn't going to go down terribly well with some people who like those kind of events, but just didn't feel right to me that we were having better stuff. You know, if we'd had the same, anyway, they've stopped it.
No, which is fantastic, and I think, you know, I just never want to lose that point. It takes a lot of courage, and like you say, your knees were knocking, but women do, and they do, and women do stand up, and it does take a lot of bravery. So it's just interesting to explore that a bit with you, and just because it's inspirational for other women. So I'm going to get onto your role models now. So I know we've talked about this in our pre-brief, but so who, in your early life, you know, who were the key people, so you can, women and men, who have influenced you? And so do you want to make a start on that?
Well, my father was a big influence. As I say, he believed in educating women, and we weren't well off, you know, it was on co-op wages, and anything that was free, which was museums and art galleries, churches, things like that, he used to take me around. That's where we spent weekends. And so I had a lot of influence from that, and a lot of interest in those sort of things. I mean, I didn't know pop music existed until I went to secondary school, because we didn't do anything like, you know, it was always, you know, serious stuff. And then my maternal grandmother was very, very inspirational. She'd been a suffragette. She'd been and heard Christabel Pankhurst speak, and she'd done various things. She didn't get sent to prison or anything like that, because she couldn't have afforded to. Only the rich women could afford really to get sent to prison back then. It wasn't all women who could afford to throw bricks through windows and get arrested, because a family would starve.
I think that's a really interesting point, because you've mentioned it in our pre-brief, and it was just, I've never really thought about it. You know, you can't do that because you can't actually afford it, you know. So, and it's a really interesting framing of the level of activism you can actually afford to do, because you've got it's too risky, because you've got to like carry a family with you as well. So, no, it's fascinating that when you mentioned it.
Yeah. So that was she was inspirational. Her sister, well, I didn't find this out till I was in my teens, because there's no way anyone was going to have mentioned this back then just to a small child, but my aunt was assistant to Mary Stopes at the first birth control clinic in London.
Wow.
And I think that was quite inspirational. When I was so proud when I found out what she actually did, because I was just told she was a nurse, but then I found out what exactly she did, and the abuse that she'd taken for doing this from men, you know, being accosted in the street and shouted at as they came out the clinic. So that was like, and then probably two teachers at school. It was a grammar school I went to back then, and there was a absolutely formidable senior mistress, middle-aged, bun, fierce expression, who taught English, Miss Furness, and everyone was terrified of it. But she lit my life. She introduced me to Shakespeare and literature, and I must have been a very serious, boring child, but absolutely loved all this Shakespeare. And she introduced me to good literature and made me appreciate it. and then I went, she left and I went to college, and I had a tutor there, Mrs. Poson, and I subsequently found out that her entire family had perished in Auschwitz, and she'd actually gone to Jerusalem for Eichmann's trial, to shout, hang him outside, and totally understood why she did. But she took a bit of a shine to me, and she lived in Nottingham, and she offered to tutor me on Saturday mornings because she thought that I would get good grades and I would do well, and she offered me extra tuition free because we couldn't have afforded to have paid it. So every Saturday for probably the best part of a year, I went over to Nottingham.
Wow.
For extra tuition from her, and she was also someone who made me love words and love literature.
Yeah. And beyond your immediate, who at that time external to you, so like, role models externally were swirling around for you,
Well, I became politicized at about 13, and mainly because of the assassination of Kennedy. That was such a massive thing. Everybody of my generation can remember where they were when they heard that Kennedy had been shot. And that was such a shock. But at the same time, in South Africa, Nelson Mandela was on trial along with many colleagues, facing a death penalty, basically simply for wanting a vote and wanting equal rights and not being given it. So I became very aware of that. And again, my father encouraged me to think these things through. So I became very interested in South African politics, joined anti-apartheid, and the women of South Africa, Albertina Sisulu particularly, Winnie Mandela, who always gets a bad press, but if you'd lived and been through what Winnie Mandela had been through, I think you'd have turned a bit violent yourself.
Who was Albertina? Who was she?
Walter Sisulu, a member of the ANC. She was his wife. She was a nurse, and she was a great leader and a role model for Black women in South Africa. Ruth First was a white woman who campaigned for Black people to get the vote. She ended up being blown up. I've read her daughter's autobiography, and she went over and she asked where the body was. Where's my mother's body? And they said, well, blown to smithereens. There isn't a body. And that always sort of stayed with me, that this woman was so principled. That's what happened to her. And then people like Rosa Parks in the States refusing to give up a seat on the bus. It was all big stuff at the time. And, it all seemed so unfair that these people were treated so differently. So that made me want to stand against that, and I did.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting that what is it and who is it that makes you become politicised, and it's and like you said, there's a whole list of very powerful, principled women there, isn't it? And there again, I mean, I do want to bring you on to sports influences, because you've mentioned this in our pre-brief. So you've mentioned the who in like female sports women that who have influenced you as well.
Well, very much into tennis, because I played tennis and I enjoyed it very much. Billie Jean King for me will always be.
I mean, she's hugely political, isn't she? Yeah.
She's hugely political, and she fought for the women's game for equality. So all these women today that are earning this big money, it's mainly down to Billie Jean King and the fact that she fought for it. And then Martina Navratilova became the first person to really out themselves as lesbian and demand equal rights. I thought she was brilliant. She took over the equal pay issue as well. There was a beautiful player called Maria Bueno from Brazil, and she became a politician when she retired from tennis. And even today, the Williams sisters, because they are they're not got a tennis court at home. like people like Tim Henman, they have a tennis court in the garden and they can practice. They played on the public courts in LA, and you know, they have done so well. So those are the sort of sporting women that I, you know,
and it's just really, and what I'm impressed with just talking to you, Elaine, you know, you've got a really breadth of interest as well. So, you know, you're passionate about your football, you're passionate about your tennis, you're passionate about politics, you're passionate about your family, you're passionate about co-ops. It's like this real eclectic, wide-ranging, you know, influences really. So we'll keep pulling that out as we're going along. So who are you know, because I'm just, because you've told me all this and I'm going to pull it out of you, who are your later influences then? Women or men, again, women and men, who are, you know, and politically, so one person you've mentioned is Margaret Beckett, so I'll jot that in for you.
Right, okay, thanks. Yeah, well, yeah, Margaret Beckett's been a personal friend for best part of 40 years, and she's immensely impressive. She's so cool, calm and collected at all times, and you can see a brain ticking. And how did you first meet Margaret Beckett then? She was the MP, and I was on the I can't remember. I certainly was there when she was interviewed. We went for I went down for a lot of interviews at the Derby Labour Club, and I was on the panel, whatever it was. I can't remember the details of that, but Margaret Beckett came, and all the others were men, as far as I can recall, and we selected Margaret Beckett to stand as the prospective parliamentary candidate for Derby South, and she's been there ever since, and she's been a fantastic MP, and so she became a personal friend, and she's just great. She's just great. You know, she's just someone to really admire. She's such a safe pair of hands. You know, when she was foreign secretary, and you know, she's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So she's one, I would say. I was always an admirer of Jenny Lee, Nye Bevan's wife. I thought she was really good back in the day, and people like Barbara Castle introduced the breathalyzer, and that's right. And then abroad, I'm a huge fan of Hillary Clinton. I think she's amazing, absolutely amazing. She may be a little brash for some, but I quite like that. And I like the fact that she was in America's top 100 lawyers and Bill was nowhere near. You know, she is so much brighter than Bill, and yet he gets to be president and she doesn't. Yeah, that's the greatest tragedy, isn't it? Really? Yeah, but, shocking that. I'm very big admirer of Elizabeth Warren, senator for Massachusetts. I mean, she's super smart, isn't she? She is. She persisted. You know, Donald Trump hated her and he couldn't get the better of her at all. She gave him a very hard time. And then over in New Zealand, a new generation, Jacinda Ardern, I think she's absolutely brilliant. Yes, Juliet's just saying she persisted. Yeah, you can get T-shirts with, and yet she persisted, you know. I think it's great. It's absolutely great. And it's what you want to do, you know. So those, I would say. And then there's, in the co-op, I suppose, probably Pauline Green is the outstanding one. Yeah, because you talked at length again. Do you want to just say a bit about Pauline then, and why? How I met Pauline. Yeah, and what is it about Pauline that, you know, because I know we're going to move into your co-op life after this. So, all right, okay. Which moves really nicely into it. So yeah, just say a bit about Pauline and your relationship and why you admire her. Yes, I was quite a lot younger, and I was at Stamford Hall, the Co-op College, and I came out of one of the side doors onto the courtyard, and there was this small dark-haired woman there, and she went, "Oh shit!" And I thought, "Ooh," you know, and I looked, and the heel had broken off her shoe. It's every woman's nightmare, you know. It's quite high heel, broken off her shoe, and I said, "Oh dear," you know. And she said, "Oh, I've got to go and give a talk." And I said, "Oh, I could possibly find you a pair of shoes upstairs, you know, if you just need to borrow them for a bit." She said, "No, I shall go and do it barefoot." And off she went. And I thought, blimey. And then somebody said to me, "What was she saying to you?" So I said, "Oh, she's broken the heel on a shoe." And she said, "That's Pauline Green." And she was a Euro MP at the time. I think she's probably leader of the might have been before she was leader, or she was leader of the socialist group in the European Parliament. And so I sort of took a lot of notice of her, and then I became on various committees, and she would be on, or she would be a guest speaker, and I got to know her quite well. And then I was absolutely amazed that this high-flying, high-powered woman, I was sitting next to her at an event, and a woman walked past and her eyes followed, and then she turned around and she said, "I'd kill for that handbag." She can actually talk about things, just chatty, you know, everyday things. She can talk about them. And we were sitting there. I don't suppose many of you remember Douglas Alexander, who's a Scottish MP. I think he was a friend of Gordon Brown's. He was at something we were at, and he was introduced and brought on the stage, and she just turned and she looked at me. She said, "Is it me?" She said, "Oh, doesn't he look old enough to be out without his mother?" And we both looked, and he did. He just looked like a sixth form student, you know, and he was a government minister. So, you know, she's a lot of fun to be with. I persuaded her to, we wanted to change things on Supporters Direct Board back in 2009, 2010. Dave Boyle became the chief executive, and we had this plan. It was called Operation DPG, to get Pauline Green to come on the Supporters Direct Board. And we worked on it, and I worked on Pauline, and she finally agreed she would come on the Supporters Direct Board and do a term of office. And we wanted her to be chair. We really, you know, wanted some gravitas in the chair, and somebody that these guys at the FA would listen to. And Pauline came on, and she did her 3 years. She did 3 years. She never learnt the offside rule, but but she did 3 great years as the chair of Supporters Direct, and did a lot of good work. So we're still friends, still in touch, and of course she's stopped giving speeches now. She's retired from that.
Yeah, she did actually at I know the college's centenary conference. She made that announcement.
That was the last one she did.
Yeah,
she came to our women's event at the National Memorial Arboretum after that, and I did ask her to stand up, and I said to everybody there, you know, she's been the big cooperative influence on me, but she wouldn't stand for any nonsense. And she, you know, she said what she thought, and she carried out what she wanted to do. And it was fantastic when she became president of the International Cooperative Alliance. She was brilliant. She spoke at the United Nations. So proud of her, you know.
What's the Pope as well? It was like, just all that access. Well, thanks for that. And it does lead into, because, you know, you said, you know, so I've got on my list, Supporters Direct, Co-op News, you know, Central England, you know, all those big co-op, you know.
And Co-op College.
And Co-op College. Yeah. So, you know, it's all those kind of big co-op kind of places that you've been involved with, really. And I just want to unpick that with you, really, in terms of what, you know, just talk a bit about each, really, I guess. You know, so with Supporters Direct, you know, how long, when did you join? What was it? Was it like football or? Yeah,
well, Derby County fan, season ticket holder, and Derby County had fallen into the wrong hands. It was awful, and we formed a supporters trust. And I just lost my mother, and I really was in a bit of a mess with things. Thank you, Shaz. Yeah, 41 minutes to mention Derby County. And somebody said, would I come and chair this first open meeting of all the fans? Oh, God, you know, hundreds of football fans, you know, I can't quite see me doing this. Anyway, they said, well, you chair co-op meetings, and this is going to be a co-op and so on. So eventually I did go down. It was probably the best thing I did, because it got me back into mainstream life again after months of having to move house and getting my father sorted out. And it really was a terrible time. So it was good to join Rams Trust, we called it. And I was the first elected chair of it. And then they were wanting people to stand for Supporters Direct Board. And there wasn't many women on it. And so I stood and I got elected to Supporters Direct board. And you know who the chair was when I was elected? It was Andy Burnham. So that's how I know Andy Burnham. So you know, we go way back to about 2004. And of course, Andy, then he was just the MP for Lee, and great man, absolutely brilliant man, total principled person, man of huge integrity, who never forgets his roots, never forgets where he came from or who his friends were on his way up, which is really important.
So would you count Andy Burnham as one of your, you know, inspirations and, you know, people you would, yeah, I'm
going to put your name in my book in a minute, Shaz Rahman.
So she's got a bingo card there, I think. You know.
Can I jump in with one question here,
yeah.
if that's okay?
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Is that all right? Because one person I don't think we have spoken about yet is Jackie Forster, of course. And so I'm just asking, so if you could talk a little bit about Jackie Forster, Women at the Game, and did you meet Jackie at Supporters Direct?
Oh, yes, Jackie came just after we'd formed Rams Trust. We had somebody else as a worker from Supporters Direct, and then Jackie Forster came. You and I both involved with Jackie. Jackie set up almost all of the supporters trusts across the country. Tremendous woman, highly inspirational woman, and she had cancer. She fought it once, she got off it, and then it returned, and it was terminal. And it was an absolutely terrible time. Andy Burnham was a great support at the time. I'm trying to think of the order of things. I ended up resigning from Supporters Direct board, along with Chris Stewart from the AFC Wimbledon, because we were so angry that they wouldn't pay her sick pay over so many weeks. And she was the longest serving employee. And we set up a group called Justice for Jack. And I'm sure there's some people online. Tanya was certainly a member of it. And we fought and campaigned in national papers and so on for justice for Jackie Forster. And within, I think, 12 weeks of doing all this, they paid all that board's gone. They said to me, you can't, you know, what can you do about it? One of them said to me, what can you do about it? And I said, it was a bit of a Margaret Casely Hayford moment. I turned around and said, just watch me. And we did. And then Jackie fought on, as you know, Rebecca, and she decided she wanted a legacy, and she founded Women at the Game to encourage more women to go to football matches, and she organised for groups of women to meet up and go together and sit together at the game, and asked clubs to find them seats together, which was great. And we were going to launch this in Manchester in May 2017, and at the Football Museum. And of course, the arena bomb went off a couple of days before, and the museum was in part of the fenced off area around the arena. And so Andy Burnham was the guest speaker. Andy rang Gary Neville, got Gary Neville to let us use hotel football at Old Trafford. And Andy couldn't, obviously, Mayor of Manchester, he got to leave there, but he found the time to give her a really good video and to play at the launch of Women at the Game. And we held it at Gary Neville's hotel at Old Trafford. So that's an example of Andy not forgetting who his friends are. And even in the moment of the greatest crisis in Manchester, and he'd not been the mayor very long, he still found the time to sort it out and do her a video. So if people wonder why I admire him so much, those are the kinds of things. And just, I mean, I only met Jackie briefly, really, but it was through your intervention, Elaine, and it was just that. And it just showed again, Elaine, how supportive you were with Jackie at that time, you know, and it was, and I know that she hugely valued, when she was incredibly vulnerable, the support that you offered and gave her. So there again, it's all credit to you as well, Elaine. Thank you. I had a lot of support. I had what we call the gang of 20. There was Tanya, myself, a couple of other women, and all the rest were guys. They were fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And we all stuck it out. We wrote letters, Co-op News printed lots and lots of letters. It was just, and the cancer got her in the end. She died in 2018. So.
Yeah, no, but so thanks Beck, actually, because for kind of reminding us really of that. So we've got 15 minutes left, and I'm going to ask Bex, after I've asked this question, just maybe to gather one or two questions before we go to the question that we ask everyone, which we'll leave that right to the end. But it's just that kind of the question. You've been a teacher, you're passionate about politics. You've got all these women behind you and around you and supporting you. And looking at young women today, what are kind of and also the world we're in and the world we've just come out of. What kind of messages and what kind of things do you want to be saying to younger women or women new to the movement today? What kind of?
I think it's a really good time for women in the cooperative movement. At the moment, elections are showing, we're looking at all the data from all the elections, women are getting elected to the co-op group members council, certainly to our board at Central England, and looking at, I think, east of England and mid counties have now got more women on the board than men, which is, if you told me that had happened 30 years ago, I would have thought it, would have been impossible. But it's a really good time. And also a lot of the women are younger. Somebody's just saying someone elected last year to the Co-op Council. Somebody from the Co-op Council who's only 18 has been elected to the Co-ops UK board. Yeah, wow, that is absolutely amazing. You've got to learn somewhere, you've got to start somewhere. But my message to all women is the world is yours to get out there and grab it. Just enjoy life and life is short. To seize every moment and live every day as if it's your last. Just keep going.
Yeah, no, and thank you, Elaine. Thanks. I mean, yeah, so before, because I'm conscious I completely hog this space. So before I ask you the final question, which you've not told us, you've not done the reveal to me and Bex. We've got a question here. So which co-op was the 18-year-old woman elected? Oh, okay, that's
somebody. She's co-op group member elected to the members council, and subsequently in an election on the members council for a vacancy on the Co-ops UK board, she's been elected to that. So that will bring the average age of the Co-ops UK board down considerably.
And there's an interesting, Juliet's posted something here actually. How do you make cooperation relevant to these young women in 2021? Or please, Elaine, write my marketing strategy.
yeah.
I mean, how do you make it relevant to 2021? I mean, we're not asking, obviously, you don't expect them, but just from your wisdom and your kind of experience, really.
Sorry, you went a bit wobbly there. I didn't hear everything you said, Sarah, but you make it relevant because youngsters today are very interested in ethical things, and people like Greta Thunberg coming forward, Malala Yousafzai, young women like this are real role models for younger women, and people should look to these people. But I think because of the co-op's ethics, and so many people they just think it's a shop, and then they think, oh, they do funerals as well. But they don't realize that it's actually a movement. It's a way of life. It's how you live your life according to those principles. And you strive to live up to those principles of equality and just doing the right thing. And I think most young people want to do that.
Shaz has asked another question. This might get him out of your little black book, Elaine. He asks, what barriers still remain for women who want to run for elections for positions of authority?
Well, it's childcare, isn't it? It's always childcare. I was quite lucky. I had a really supportive mum who looked after my baby a lot. I had a nanny paid for by my partner at the time, so that I could be on all sorts of different things. So I was quite lucky, and being a teacher, of course, you got the holidays, but it's always childcare, and they're the greatest barriers, and not being taken seriously by some people, but that's down to women to put that right themselves, really. I've never looked for the easy option. I've never looked for a position for a woman, you know, or anything like that. I've always stood against men, you know, but childcare is always the problem. I can remember we got a creche at Education Convention. That was the first success, the first time I went, and I took my son, and he was 3 or 4, and we fought for a creche. And we got one at Education Convention. It was fabulous at Stamford Hall, and that's how I first ever met Maria Lee. She was there with her 2 small daughters, and I was there, and we used the creche there, and we thought this was brilliant. And of course they could play in the woods and the field. It was a fabulous place for children to be running amok for a few days while we had a conference. And the vice principal's wife was a teacher, and the daughter wanted to go into childcare, so they ran this creche, and they were brilliant, absolutely fantastic with the children. And so then I thought, well, we'll try one for Congress. So we wrote to Congress and asked, we got this letter back, said it's in Manchester, afraid we can't provide creche facilities, but there's a creche in the Arndale Centre where you can leave your children. Like, you're going to just walk into the Arndale Centre, dump your kid off with complete strangers and clear off to a conference, you know. So that's not quite what we're after. So they got it down to 3 societies had got to request a creche. You know, I tell you, some of you don't realise the battles over the years to get these things organised.
One of the interesting things that have come out very, very recently is the Co-op Party has recently launched a thing called the Chris Herries Mentoring Scheme, which I'll put a link in it in the chat in a second, actually, if I can send it to everyone, not just Sarah. There we go. Which is another really interesting thing, because mentoring and mentorship is a huge part of women's progression in cooperatives and in life. I think it really helps women to see and observe other women in positions of authority who have been elected, who have done to it. And it's great to see Gemma Robinson's applied for it. That's
yes,
Gemma. Brilliant. And because there are barriers, and being a woman is one of them. But then imagine if you're a woman in the BAME community, a woman in the BAME community with a disability, or if you're in the LGBTQ community as well, or if you're a young person. So there's all these additional barriers that can stack on for women. And I know that, Elaine, you've certainly been a mentor to me, and for many, many others of your adopted daughters and cousins and all the other women you've adopted throughout the movement. So yeah, thank you from me. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about mentoring and about the importance of women working with other women.
I think it's important that you do bring other women on and talk to them and encourage them. And perhaps sometimes it's really difficult when you first go on to something, I think, to break your duck asking a question. So I think it's quite helpful sometimes when somebody comes on and they're new, to give them a couple of questions that they could ask, and not ones that are going to lead to a load of controversy, or, you know, where somebody's going to start laying into them, because that happened to me at Supporters Direct. And my first question, somebody over the room started laying into me. I thought, flipping heck, you know, that's a welcome, isn't it? I have to say, when I was first elected to Supporters Direct, nobody told me where to put my coat. Nobody told me where the ladies was. Nothing. I have never felt as unwelcome when I turn up a meeting at that. But that's something else, you know, tried to change. But you've got to have other women support you and try and help you along and step up a bit. So it is important. And I do try and help younger women to get on. Well, any women really. You're never too old to have a go, are you? So.
No, you're not at all. And it's certainly been my experience as well. Coming into the cooperative movement about 10 years ago, you know, it's predominantly been the women who've been very supportive, you know, and it's which has been unusual working in different sectors really. So right, with time, I'm going to get something from Beck if I don't ask this final question. So this is a final question we're asking all these inspirational women. And so if you're stranded on a desert island, what 3 items would you take with you to sustain you?
So you're letting me take the Bible and the works of Shakespeare, are you?
Well, we kind of are, yeah. Go on then.
Right, okay, because that's the usual. Well, I'll probably take a copy of the Raggy, Trouser, Philanthropist, because I think that's a book that changes the way you think about things and equality. And I think every time you read it, you can pick up something new from it, so that'll perhaps sustain me.
Yeah.
I think I'll take my sun lounger, because as everybody knows, I love sunbathing. It's my #1 hobby. And then, well, I don't want to be reading the Bible and Shakespeare and all my life. So I think I'll probably, if it's all right with AC Milan, I'd like to take Paolo Maldini with me.
We're going to let you have the cardboard cutout. I think it was the laminated cardboard cutout.
They wouldn't let me take on the Ryanair plane. From La Mezzia Terme Airport, a cardboard life-size cutout of Paolo Maldini. Can't take it on a Ryanair plane.
Anything's possible.
He need his own seat, wouldn't he?
Anything is possible. We will let you. Of course you can. Of course you can. That's yeah. Well, honestly, I just want to say, because I'm going to hand it over to Beck to just do a final wrap up. But I just want to say it's been an absolute joy. Just you know, having an hour, and you know, me and Beck have spoke to you before as well, and it's just thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being really open and just kind of, you know, sharing your experiences really. So I'm trying to ignore the comments in the side.
Yeah, it's Shaz Rahman again. I'm going to sort him out.
But yeah, that's a big thank you from me. Bex, I'm going to hand it over to you to do the final wrap up. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who's you know, we've got a big audience today. So thank you for joining us. So Bex, over to you.
I will. Elaine, thank you very, very much from me as well. It's been a pleasure having you as always. And yeah, thank you for everyone who's come as well. I've got 34 people. I know people keep on dipping in and out, but around 34, 35. So thank you all for coming and supporting Co-op Women's Voices and supporting Elaine as well.